What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be adjusting the valves on a small engine, specifically the CRF 80F right here. So let's get straight to it. All right, so the first thing we're going to have to do is take the seat off, and then we can take the tank off, and then we can reach these valves right up there. Just makes it a lot easier, that stuff off. You might be able to do it. I don't know that you can, actually. Yeah, you're going to have to take that stuff off to get the valve cover off. So first thing we're going to do is take the seat off, come to the back of the bike, right under here. We've got bolt right here and right here. We'll loosen those and then we can pull the seat off. All right, so we just got those nuts off, and now we're going to take the seat off. It's also really important to note that you want to adjust the valves on a cold engine. You do not want it to be warm, because when it gets hot, the heat changes the way the metal is. Heat makes metal shrink, I think, or expand. Either way, you want to do it this on a cold engine. All right, we're going to come up over here, take this off right there, and then take our 10 millimeter and get that bolt off right there, and same thing on the other side right there. That way the tank is loose. And then once we get those off, we can come up under here and remove this fuel line. When you do that, make sure the fuel valve is turned off, and you might want to have something to catch it, because a little fuel will probably come out. And then we can take the tank off. All right, guys, tank is off. Next thing we're gonna do, I just barely started. This thing is gonna be filthy, and we're just gonna wipe it down with a rag, or helps to take some soapy water. Spray that down, all this up there too. Don't want any dust or anything getting inside our valves once we take that cover off. So it's really important that we clean all of this really well. Don't have to worry about spraying any of those electronics. They'll be fine. So just gonna get that all cleaned, and then we can move on. All right, so we got the top of our valve cover and right underneath cleaned off, just with some soapy water. And I'm just gonna get that out of my way. Now we're gonna take our 10 millimeter and break these bolts loose on the top. I already started on this one. There we go. It's easier with two hands, so you can hold the bike without using your feet. There we go. So just gonna spin those two nuts off, and then we can carefully take this cover off. Also worth mentioning, if you're doing this on a horizontal engine, where the piston, this is the piston right up here, and that's our bottom end, top end, bottom end. If it's all down sideways and it's all flat, you're gonna have to drain the oil before you do that. There's a plug on the bottom of the, or a bolt on the bottom of the engine. Just take that out, drain the oil. Yeah, so if your engine's like this, like on this CRF 50, hopefully it has a good wheel on it, but if it's sideways, you're gonna have to drain the oil, because when you take this, actually, you don't actually, yeah, for this one, you have to take this off right here, and this one too, and I believe that's where the valves are on this motor. But anyway, you're gonna have to drain the oil. All right, so we got these bolts out. Just laid those on a clean rag, because we don't want to get dirt on these, because once you put it back together, the oil will be fluctuating through them, and then we'll get dirt in here. So now we're just going to remove our cover on the top right there. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the difference between a 2-stroke and a 4-stroke. These valves right there. All right, just gonna set that to the side. And right up here, we've got, I believe this is gonna be our intake valve and exhaust valve. Gonna have to double check on that. But now that we've got that cover off, we can work on the spacing. Alright, so now we're going to take this cover off right here. It's just going to be 8mm bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I believe. And then move on. Alright, so we just got this cover off. When you do that, one of these bolts is going to be a little longer, so it's going to be the top middle one, at least on this bike. So just make sure you don't get that confused. And then we ripped that a little bit right there, so it's a good idea to replace that too. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to take this right here and we're going to spin it around a couple times, or however many times it takes, until we get right in the center of that screen there. There's a T on there, and then there's an F on those lines, and there's 2 lines right there. Don't worry about those, don't need that F. We're going to find that T right there next to that line, and we're going to get that line right there in line with that little mark right there, or right next to it. You can see mine's just barely in front of it. That's okay, and we're going to spin that around a couple times until it's like that. And both of these valves are, we can just barely wiggle them side to side, or up and, yeah, just barely, should barely be able to wiggle them at all. And then we're in top dead center, which means we can now move on and adjust these valves. So in order to do that, we're going to need a feeler gauge. Could be wrong, but I think they're like at most $12 on Amazon. So we've got our gauge right here, and on it we've got all these measurements, or they're all different thicknesses. We're going to find 0.002, which is super thin. So we're going to find it on here, and I have it right here. Used this one before on valves. Yes, this is what we're going to use. We're just going to sit that right down there. And now we're going to get a box wrench. I believe that's a 10mm, and we're just going to get some pliers, needleless pliers right here, because we're going to hold. You can tell these are not perfectly round. There's a little square on top. We're going to hold that square and undo that, or not undo, we're just going to loosen that nut a little bit. Just going to get it loose. Alright, so I forgot to mention earlier, for this engine, they're all 0.002 inches, both valves, so it doesn't really matter, but I believe this is going to be the exhaust valve, and this the intake, because the exhaust comes out right here, and it's closer to that valve, and the carburetor and intake is right over there, right next to that valve. Carburetor goes into that one. So now that we've got our 2 thousandths or 0.002 inches feeler gauge, what we're going to be doing is on the top, that little square part, we can tighten it and loosen it, and we're going to get this gauge to fit in between the top of that spring and that little thing we're twisting, just barely, so that's a little loose. So I'm going, I'm going to twist it and try to tighten it. It's important that you don't want to twist it while the feeler gauge is in there, because if you get too tight, you can mess up your gauge and then it won't be accurate. So with the gauge out, we tighten it. Now it doesn't fit in there. Barely loosen it and try to tighten it a little more. And right there, we have it exactly where we want it. So we're going to, while holding it, we're going to try to tighten that nut just barely by hand. Make sure it's still good. Yep. So now we're going to grab our needle nose, hold that right where it is, that square, because we do not want it to move. And now we're going to try to tighten that nut right there. Just get it snug. Doesn't need to be too tight, but we don't want it too loose either. pretty snug. So now we're going to take our gauge and make sure it's accurate. And that feels a little loose, so we're going to loosen this nut on top. That's tightening. We're going to loosen this nut and try again. There we go. We have our we have our feeler gauge, so we're gonna try that again. Tightening it. There we go. That's perfect. Try to tighten that up. Just barely spin it with your finger. Still good. So once again, we're going to hold that little top of the square on there. Try to keep it from moving while we tighten it. There we go. Get our feeler gauge again. And perfect. Same thing to the other side. Already did that one. Now we can put our cover back on, tighten those bolts, and put that cover on, tighten those bolts, put the tank on, put the fuel line on, put the seat on, and that's it. So if you want, you can look up the torque specs and torque all these bolts down if you want, or when I'm just getting them snug, just make sure you don't get them too tight and strip them, but you should be fine if they're just snug. Valve cover, timing something cover, fuel tank, and the seat. If you guys want to see more content like this, please hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed day.